It's a high-tech conversation
and a low-tech topic.
live on the World Wide Web via Zoom. Bench Talk 101.
Welcome everybody to tonight's Bench Talk. We've just been talking about the COVID reactions that we've been doing at the college. It's quite scary that just gone 5, we get a breaking news message on our phone, which basically says today's count for positive cases for COVID is 33,500 people, which is colossal. You think the last few days it's been in the 20,000s, early 20,000s, and then to go up to this amount is absolutely huge. So we're in a lockdown. I'm just saying, does it feel like a lockdown? Well, all colleges and schools and universities are still open, so we're still seeing it. We're still seeing the construction trade still working. The roads are still really busy. It doesn't seem to be much of a lockdown. And the case numbers, as I say, keep going up. So it's kind of worrying for all of us. On the positive note, though, we've heard that our makers of Viagra have come up with a stonkingly good vaccine, and one hopes that we're going to start seeing some of that by Christmas, which will be really great. And they've kind of like started to publish who's going to get it first. So I'm looking around the room. Some of you old fellas are going to get it before some of us younger fellas. So happy days. That means that we hopefully won't lose anybody from this group, and we can carry on sharing all the great practice and all the great expertise that we've been listening to. I mean, it's weeks and weeks now. I keep thinking one week I'm going to have a week off and have a bit of a holiday, but we keep getting more people offering to speak, which is great. We had a complete random person that's not been on, but has apparently watched all of them, volunteering to talk. So hopefully he'll be with us later on in this program, and we can quiz him a bit more about what he wants to talk to us about. But it's along the lines of 18th century furniture, which sounds quite good. But going back to today, we've got our guest speaker, Mitch. So I'm just going to allow Derek to kind of introduce him. But if you are new with us, make sure that you put keep your microphones on mute, and go to speaker view so that you can see what's going on, and sit back and enjoy. After Rich has finished, there'll be a chance for you to then ask questions. So in the chat button below, just put your name in the chat, and we can then flick you up on the screen to answer the questions. So Derek, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Geoffrey. Good evening, everybody. Tonight's speaker is perhaps one of the hardest working YouTube woodworkers in the business, with more than 800 videos to his name and a subscriber list currently hovering around 45,000, which is quite remarkable, really. So Mitch's video career started out as a bit of a joke, he's just told me, around 7 years ago, but it's become more and more serious in recent years. And along with a series of published articles in Woodworking and Woodworking Crafts magazine, Furniture and Cabinet Making, and Wood Carving magazine, he's managed to develop it into something that's generating a regular revenue stream, which is more than a lot of YouTube woodworkers can say. So his topic for this evening's discussion is the Knuckle Joint, with also happens to be the title of his latest video, if you want to check that out on YouTube. So without further ado, and before I make a complete fist of the intro, I'll hand you over to Mitch.
Thank you very much, Derek. That's really everyone. I'm Mitch. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a part-time professional woodworker who prior to COVID was teaching a little, taking the odd commission and producing videos for a YouTube channel. This year, though, I've been mostly catching up on a mountain of maintenance around the home. I slipped YouTube in there, and it's really the spine that holds the evening's talk together, but please excuse me if I do go off topic, which I usually do. And also, I've got a bad memory, so I suddenly go blank. We'll have to go straight to questions anyway. Before I go on, there's just one meeting etiquette issue that I'd like to address. If you feel a burning need to leave for any reason, please don't raise your hand to ask, just slip off. That's exactly what I intend to do. Okay, well, let's start with early life. I was born and bred in East Sussex, which is on the south coast of England. In fact, the town I live in is right on the coast. I've got a loving and supportive family that brought me up there. and really had an ideal childhood. But like so many creative people, I was rather unruly at school to begin with. Didn't buckle down until I got to secondary school. I was feeling, probably creative people know this. Last week we heard from Phil Morley, and if you missed that, do check it out. But the same sort of things happened to me, although I got it all in check before it went totally out of control. My behaviour was born out of boredom, really, at school. I always wanted to know how things worked, what was inside things that I couldn't see from the outside. I was forever taking stuff apart, no matter what it was. None of my toys survived. For some reason, the teachers and the headmistress didn't appreciate that. I can't think why. Having had the slipper in front of the whole school on several occasions, I kind of realised that was time for me to buckle down a little bit. I became ill as a teenager, eventually being diagnosed with Crohn's disease weeks after sitting my O-levels. And the illness was probably the main reason I chose to stay on in education, finally gaining an engineering degree. Although we had woodworking as one of many introductions to craft at school, the options I took prevented me carrying on with it. But I did take graphical communications, which has really helped putting down on paper the ideas that often come to me. I worked in, after my degree, I worked in both project management and process management for about a decade. Roles I absolutely loved, and I'd still be in them today. But unfortunately, the high pressurized environment, which is no good for me, the stressful life, constantly an aggravation for the illness, and eventually I had to give it up. And that really is what got me into woodworking. It was whilst I was recovering from the last major operation that I rediscovered my interest in woodworking and other crafts. I tried painting again, I tried photography, but woodwork was the one that really took my interest most. And that was spurred on by lying in my recovery bed watching New Yankee Workshop, amongst other programs. So if you don't like what I do, just blame Norm Abram. Once I was strong enough, I started to equip a shed with small bench and tools and started practicing what I'd seen on the various shows. But it wasn't very, at least I couldn't seem to achieve the results that they did to begin with. And I started looking for other ways to learn. A lot of it was trial and error, but I found some DVDs that were very good. And I started getting to reading woodworking books. And that became a bit of a habit, a bit of an obsession, actually. I've got far more books than I could ever have read. And probably 2/3 of them are still unread. I limit myself now to buying a maximum of 2 books a year. And I figure if I live long enough, I might actually get through all those books. Early work, as far as woodworking went, isn't really documented. I should have taken more pictures, but I didn't. I'm going to share with you some of the stuff from when I did start taking pictures. And hopefully you'll be able to see that screen. Geoffrey, I don't know if you need to do any magic. I can't actually hear anyone. I've got some thumbs up.
It's all good, all good.
So I'll share with you some of the stuff when I started recording what I was making. Let's show you Eastbourne first of all. So I do live in a lovely part of the world, and it's great for inspiration for things. We don't have particularly good hardwood forests in East Sussex that I've come across. They're virtually unmanaged, at least in my locality, but that's great for photography. So early work. This was the first piece that I made that I was really happy with. Looking at it now, it's got loads of mistakes in it. But it's something that I dreamt up. I haven't seen something like it anywhere else, so I was really chuffed at completing it and it actually working. I actually had no idea whether when I sat on it, it would collapse, because as you can see, they're rather thin slats, but it makes for a very comfortable bench, takes 2 people. And I want to bring that back now and actually make a set of single and double benches, a chair and a table. And I've got lots of ideas, starting to put those down on paper. So if you keep watching on YouTube, you may see that coming up in forthcoming years. And bad photograph, this one, but I started making small cabinets. You can see there's an influence from people like Krenoff and Alan Peters. And this was something, again, entirely from my own mind, and probably one of the most attractive things that I've made as far as I'm concerned. It's a small hall table, and you can't see, it's got a hidden drawer on the front. Sorry, I should have said that before. There's a hidden drawer in the front there. Where I came up with an idea for a pull underneath just to push it out to start it off. And as you can see, this is when I actually started recording the making progress. Okay, paid work. I started doing bits and pieces for family and friends to begin with, as I suppose most hobby woodworkers do. And once they were happy with what they got, people, their friends and friends saw stuff, and I started getting asked to do stuff. That was the way that I got into actually starting a small business. I still had restrictions because after all the illness I'd had, I was very limited on my stamina, so I couldn't work for that many hours. But I would do small commissions and start getting paid for it. But one of the problems I tended to find, the commissions never really fitted the things I wanted to build. So this extension to a, I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, it's an extension to a church dais. So it's a three-piece step really that is easy to move around unless you're standing on it, and it's fixed in position obviously. So great to get the work, but not really something that I wanted to build for the pleasure of it. Again, lots of things like this, so bookcases, cabinets. I turned up to this lady's apartment and she said, or she'd previously told me, I want some shelves built. I hear you do some good work. I've seen some of your work. I like it. I'd like you to make some cabinets. I turned up and she had a drawing of exactly what she wanted, exact dimensions, and she wanted it painted. So it's one of those ones you turn up and you think, oh, I wish I'd said I'm too busy. But I can't say no, so I carried on and made it for her. Another thing were a pair of steps. You turn up, yeah, I'd like you to make me some steps. Okay, what sort? I'm thinking some like library steps or something. No, it's steps to get out of a high doorway. But I take these challenges on. As I say, I can't say no, and I made those, and they're very satisfied with them. My smallest commissions. This was really the last couple of years. I met a gentleman who used to work as a museum curator, and he had a lot of artifacts. I don't know how he got hold of them. I didn't ask any questions, but lots of very old and valuable artifacts that he wanted to display, and he needed stands for them. They'd obviously been broken off things in the past and they wouldn't stand up on their own. So making custom stands for him, I probably made at least a dozen of those. Also, he had this samovar, which is a Russian water heating thing. The knobs had rotted off on that, so I made those for him. So again, nothing really that you'd expect a woodworker trying to do furniture, nice furniture, should be doing that sort of thing. But hey, one takes the work when one can get it. This was a display for some, you can see, drinking vessels. He'd seen in a magazine something almost identical to this. He said, I want some shelves for my drinking vessels. Can you make exactly this? And the magazine article was for selling these cups, but it also included a price for the displays. And I was gobsmacked when I saw how much it was. So I was able to provide it for him for half the price and make a decent profit on it myself. So you never know what you're going to get into. Clocks as well. I've met someone who collects clocks. He's got hundreds of clocks. He's always picking them up at auction. They've always got things wrong with them. This was a great pair to tell you about. He originally had the one on the left. I think it was an auction or an antique shop or something. He saw the one on the right and thought, oh, that's a pair to the one I've got. Bought it thinking he could display them together, and then realized they were different sizes. And actually, if you put this frame on, you see that there's a wooden edge to the face here, which is shown, and in this one you can't see that. You're straight onto a black molding like we've got on here, so almost identical but not quite. But he decided he wanted them as like a father and son clock, so the one was bigger than the other. What does he want me to do? He wanted me to take this round frame and reduce it in size. Not the most obvious thing to be able to do. I mean, you can't, it's not like something square where you can just take a little piece out and put them together. So I ended up having to take all the molding off, take a piece out, glue it back together so it wasn't circular, then make it circular on the inside and the outside again, recolor it, refinish, and then reapply all the moldings. So that was actually very interesting, and some of the clockwork that I've had from him has been a joy to work on, to be honest. It leads me on to YouTube, and having learned a fair bit, I certainly probably don't know as much as many of you on there about woodworking. You know, I've only been doing it for 20 years now. I'm sure there's plenty more for me to learn. But I found myself thinking, well, actually, I've got a lot of skills that I could share with people, and I like sharing stuff with people. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine, and I didn't know about YouTube at the time. As I say, it's quite a while ago, about 7 years ago. And he said, well, you really ought to do that on YouTube. That'd be the best way to go about it. And so I set up a YouTube channel and filmed some comic-y woodworking videos, put them up just for him to see as a sort of a joke on him. He saw them, thought it was funny, but other people were seeing them and thinking it was funny as well, and other people were complaining about the content. So having enjoyed making the videos, I thought, well, I'll strip those ones out, but I'll make some serious ones. And that was the way I started to spread a little bit of knowledge for people who are trying to get into woodworking. And that was basically what the channel was all about. Talking about the paid work as well, before I go on too further, I should say that at this point, having started on YouTube, the options to me to be able to share my knowledge was to either start teaching in a sort of basic way. As I say, I didn't have a full complement of skills, but start teaching or writing articles for magazines and things like that. But to get into that would be quite a jump from doing nothing like it at all. So YouTube actually seemed a good fit. I could get lots of feedback from people about how I was trying to tell them to do things, and I could build up a bit more confidence in teaching that way. But eventually I did go into doing some one-on-one teaching as well. Now on YouTube, a lot of people think you go into YouTube to make money. If you're a YouTuber, which basically is someone that publishes on YouTube who has more viewers that are strangers to him than family and friends. And pretty soon I was in that situation. So as a YouTuber, YouTubers, some of them make an awful lot of money. I can tell you most of them don't. And I make a bit of money, and it covers the cost of some of my videos if they get a lot of views and a lot of shares. The first really good serious video I did, I think, was the restoration of a Stanley No. 4. It went to over an hour in length, covering not just the restoration, but tuning it so it took probably, you know, the best sort of shavings you'd expect to get from a Stanley plane. That's done reasonably well. Just to give you an indication, that's been up for almost 7 years. And you see, you don't make much money. That's the total amount that video has brought in over 7 years. £615. Now, with coming up to 900 videos, I think it is now. If they all made that money, hey, I'd be laughing. But they don't, and I'll show you that a little bit later as well. So I've done lots of joint videos as well. The most, I suppose, interesting was a secret mitre full blind dovetail. A lot of people have asked me to do that, and it's tricky to put that on a video because there are so many bits and pieces in it. You want to try and keep somebody's attention right the way through it. But eventually did that, and that was quite popular. The reason for the title of the talk was Knuckle Joint. And actually, Geoffrey should have kept the question mark at the end of it, because obviously this talk is not just about a knuckle joint. This seems to be quite popular though amongst woodworkers, because this is the video that has shown, that has been viewed the most. It's actually been viewed over 500,000 times. You would think with that many views, again, you'd earn some money, but so far that's only made less than £600. I don't want to keep going on about financials, but I just want to give you an idea of what the usual video makes, at least for me. So doing a video on using a Stanley 45. I did a series of those videos for each video for each setup of the plane and what you could do with it. And this was part 2 of matching boards, putting the groove in. And this is very typical of the revenue from my videos. Get 2,000–3,000 views, and in its lifetime, it's earned less than £5. So you can see, if 95% of my videos are like that, I'm not in it for the money. Trends on YouTube are popular things as well, and they're good for trying to get more viewers to your channel. So I would do projects that were following trend, but slightly differently. And you will remember, and it's probably still going on, that people are making lots of things from pallets. So I decided, well, let's make something a little bit different from a pallet. And I came up with this chair. As you can see, it's very similar to a Maloof chair. It's got Maloof joints in it, but I've displayed this at a show in Eastbourne a few years ago, and the response was amazing. You did that from a pallet? You know, they couldn't believe it. So that was fun. But you have to do things that people can actually replicate as well if you're trying to teach them. So this was a little project making a planter, again from pallet wood, just with a galvanized tray underneath it. And that's that level of woodworking is so attainable to people just starting, and that's really important for me to put some of those videos in amongst all the other stuff I do. Tools as well are very popular on YouTube, so anything that helps a woodworker seems to be popular on the woodworking channels. And this was just a little saw bench that I made. I meant to go now to a video, so let's just see whether that's going to work. If I swap to this one, this is a bench I made, and I filmed this earlier because I've been having some problems with buffering, and I didn't want to have any problems tonight. So hope you just enjoy a few minutes of this. So by the magic of video, I've taken you back several hours today to show you the pallet workbench. So this is a workbench that I built for, it ended up being less than £15 using pallets mainly and a lot of glue. Okay, so here it is. Ignore the 52.5 vise. That was an add-on a bit later on. That doesn't come within the £15. So let's talk you through it really. It's got a laminated top made from the slats from pallets. All the legs are laminations of pallet slats. The board jacks, also made from pallet slats. The actual risers on them are plywood, and there's a little dowel that goes through the hole. And they give you 1, 2, 3, 4 additional levels for every hole, which means you can pretty much get the exact height you want with your boards. 2 of those. The worktop itself
is indexed to the front of the legs with a single dowel and floats free on the rest of its bearer that goes right the way through. So that can be lifted off. The whole thing can come apart within 5 minutes and pretty much flat packs. The end assemblies are glued up, but the front and rear rails here have about a 1/2 inch tenon going into the legs, and they're held together with countertop joining bolts, which you'll know if you do any kitchen fitting. You might be able to see one right back in this corner. So 4 of those come out of the £15 budget. So that's the leg frame assembly. The top, as I say, all laminated. And I think it's important, and the reason I did this bench was to show that for virtually no money you can produce something which is solid and stable. I mean, this is pretty heavy, it won't move around, certainly weighs more than I do. Taking a closer look at the top, most bench tops are either flat or they have a tool well. This has got the option of both. So we've got a plywood insert here that makes it flush, but we can lift that, twist and drop, and we end up with a tool well. And work holding is always an ambitious task to set yourself when you've got a very low budget. So I've built in a hardwood rising dog. This can be locked off at any height. That does for most planing tasks. If you've got wider boards, then a little bit of hardwood again, a flip stop on the back, so that connects on there, goes over that dog, and you've got a full width planing stop. If you're going to be planing narrow boards on their side, then something like this, slipped over the bench dog, slip your work in there, wedge in the back, and that's lovely and solid. Also, simple bit of a pallet with a bird's mouth cut out the end. If you're planing something which wants to twist round on you, easy enough to put the bird's mouth round the far corner, and that'll stop it twisting. I'm going pretty fast, but if you've got any questions, we'll do that at the end of the session, as usual. Now, something I didn't originally plan to do with this was build a shoulder vise for it. So as you can see, we've got the shoulder, we've got the vise, which I've actually put twin screws on. That bolts all the way through the bench, that's where it originally went. And at the moment, now that I've replaced it with that vise, I've drilled through on this side, so I can have it on the opposite side of the bench. That's great for dovetailing when you want to hold a wider board and you've got no vice screw in the way or vice guides in the way. The one thing that a beginner woodworker might have trouble with is making the threads, and indeed if I was to make this again, I had the choice, I'd use a bigger thread cutter, have a slightly bigger thread and a slightly coarser thread as well, because it takes quite a long time to wind these in and out. That's the main reason I replaced it with the 52.5. The last accessory that I made was a bench top. Not a bench top, what am I talking about? The last accessory I made was a bench hook, but this is both push and pull saw friendly. Slips over there. We could even tighten up on this screw so it's not going anywhere. Push saw against the block, pull saw from the back of the block. Covers both things. I often find that's a problem working on other benches where you've got a normal bench hook. I build my bench hooks, which flipped one way work west and flip the other way work with the pull stroke. But that means you've got to either hook it on the front or on the back of the bench. This one puts your saw right in the middle of the bench, and so I'm quite pleased with that. Flip it around the other way. You might have guessed you've got a small shooting board. It also comes in handy because you can clamp it on wherever you like, and it's not going anywhere. So you could clamp something between a full width planing stock there and against this, and you know, gives you a pretty sound clamping to do whatever you want to do. So they were the accessories I built. Very pleased with that. The only problem I've had so far with the bench is that the board jacks I built at the time have become a little bit stiff on the rail after things have adjusted. So they're just a little bit awkward to move along and position. But I put a bit of wax on that earlier today and it's working a bit better. So that's the really cheap bench. And talking of the pallets that I used to make this, using some other pallets, I also made this. This is a knockdown shave horse. I call it a shave dog actually because it's not huge, but I'm 6 foot and I can use it perfectly adequately. So every
I see that time's actually getting on, so I'll stop sharing that. I'll go back to the pictures just to show you some of the work that I've been doing more recently. This was a table which there was a trend for waterfall tables, and I always thought the right angle waterfall table wasn't really cutting the mustard, so I decided to do one with an acute angle instead. And that became quite popular with viewers. I'm not sure whether anyone's made one or not, but and a small hobbit chair. This is definitely a popular one. I wish they'd release The Hobbit again and Lord of the Rings, but that was my first attempt at making any sort of stick chair, so I was pleased with that as well. And that one actually went to my nephew, who's very happy with it. And these are all projects that I did for YouTube, so not commissioned work. This shows that I do little things as well, so a little box showing how to do little dovetails on very thin bits of wood, how to grain match around the whole box. Other interesting things I've done is you can see this little tabletop Zen garden. So that's showing how to do finger joints, a little bit of molding. And then following on with the table you saw earlier, epoxy is a new flavor, I think, on YouTube for the last couple of years. I don't particularly like epoxy. I've seen a few tables that I think are gorgeous, but there's so many out there now, I'm getting a bit tired of it. But I decided to do one or prototype one, which could be made with a glass top instead, so that you can see a lot more details between it and have a more refined, I thought, type of table. So here I've got, it's a live oak slab that I split down the middle, swap the sides over so the live edges are in the middle, joined them at the bottom, and then throughout the rest of the table they're joined with some copper, and then what should be glass, but I've done it actually with acrylic here. And you can see at the end of the table, because it's acute, we get the acrylic hanging down, and it's actually formed as though it's dripping off the end. Last year, I was lucky enough to say that something on my bucket list was a writing slope. And a very kind guy decided to be my patron on that and pay for all the materials that I needed to make this, purely to be able to see the videos of it. So occasionally things like that happen as well, which is lovely. So this is East Indian rosewood. It's designed with magnetic lifts for the little compartments here with a little handle. normal sort of slope inside. And you can see the size, that's an A4 piece of paper on there. That had secret mitre dovetails in all the corners as well. So that was quite a challenge to build the box with all of those, cut it in half at an angle and get it to all flush up nicely. And it's got a secret compartment as well, but that's a secret. Another one of my designs was this table. There's a slight problem with it. I just didn't discover until I'd finished, which is one of the things you learn, I guess, as you get older. This curve here was a little bit too thin. It was a little bit springy. So a couple of options were to put a brace across underneath here, or just to give it a removable foot. And I gave it a removable foot. If it's on carpet, it doesn't spring because the feet dig in and it won't stretch out. But on a laminate floor like this, it did a bit. Commissioned YouTube work. I think I mentioned earlier that I get paid to do some videos. I only do 4 a year, and it's for a company that produced something which isn't really any hand tool woodworker's dream, which is a CNC machine. It's only one of those basic hobby crafting machines, but it can do some very accurate work on a small scale. So you can see here I've made some through dowels on the end of this piece of oak and the associated holes to fit the top and to fit the bottom. And here it shows the using a machine like that to make something which otherwise there's a lot of work involved in laying out all of these patterns to do on a piece of wood. Well, it's very easy to do it on screen and just let the CNC carve it. Collaborations, something else that helps boost the YouTube channel is if you do something in collaboration with another channel. And recently I linked up with Dorian Bract, which some of you may have heard of. And we do a challenge where we make things all of wood, no glue for any of the joints. And this is one of the things I made, which was a whatnot, we call it in England. Basically a thing to put little ornaments on. And that's based on lily pads and iris leaves and iris flower. So no glue in that. Another thing was the shoji screens. No glue in those joints, but obviously glue to hold the paper on. And more recently, I did get into writing magazine articles, as Derek said in my introduction. You'll only find them in paper format, I think, in the UK, because they're all UK magazines, but they are available as online issues as well. And various projects I put in there was this little, I call it a bedside table. It's got the little lips either side because I was always having problems with the remote control for the telly slipping off the table and little things like that. The little shoji inspired Japanese lantern with a burnt finish to it. So this is oak, using the Japanese technique of burning the wood first to make it black and then lacquering over the top. And there's a table inspired by a film by Akira Kurosawa, one of his samurai films. I saw a table, wasn't anything as refined as this, it was in some small village, but it gave me the idea of actually doing a low table, a couch table. So I came up with that design. And the latest one, which you get to see before it's actually been published, is a little ash side table with steam bent legs. And another one that I've done recently is this little chopping board with a slight difference. It's got feet on it. It's a live edge chopping board, and obviously it would rock otherwise, so I decided to put some feet on it. So some feature feet and a little Dutchman there across a little crack. So they're the sorts of things that I get up to for magazines. Oh, and last of all, my first Netsuke, which was in wood carving magazine. So that pretty much brings me to the end of my little talk. Hope you've enjoyed it. Very happy to take any questions. So if you want to take back control, Geoffrey.
Brilliant, brilliant. I mean, that's I mean, you've certainly kept yourself busy over the last 7 years. That's a humongous amount of stuff that you've made there. And I did a quick calculation for the benefit of our members of Bench Talk that if we tried to make some revenue from our videos, I think we're owed about 3 pence. So I don't think the members are going to make much money from the Bench Talk at the moment compared with your sales there. So I mean, Mitch, that was brilliant. I mean, you, like I said, you've certainly been busy there, and you must be spending a lot of your time on this to make that many projects and to make 900 videos for YouTube. I mean, what sort of hours are you spending on this?
Yeah, I mean, in all, I probably spend 2 days a week solidly woodworking, but spread out across the whole 7 days. As I say, I do have stamina problems, so I can't be at it all day long. But it's enough to keep me very happy. And when I'm not doing that, I'm editing videos, or I'm, as I say at the moment, an awful lot of maintenance around the house.
Wow. Okay, so let's go over to questions then. Chester, you're up first.
Yeah, I guess I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Mitch, that was really good. It was a good presentation. And I love your system for making the knuckle joints. I think that's really brilliant. And I learned a lot from that.
Have you seen that one?
And it's no worries that we didn't even get into that. But I'm interested. I think that your creativity is phenomenal. And so my question to you is what is inspiring your designs? Because it appears from your early work really wasn't that primitive, but to the latter work seems to be very, very refined and styled. And so I'm wondering, what's your inspiration? What do you use? Are you just using other people's YouTube videos, or are you reading Fine Woodworking magazine, or are you just from all of these books that you've acquired that you get these ideas, or are you just naturally talented as far as being creative? Because I think that it's really, some of your work is really quite brilliant.
Thank you. Dare I say I think I'm naturally talented? No, seriously though, I obviously watched YouTube when I started my channel, but to be perfectly honest with you, if I've watched half a dozen videos this year on YouTube, that's probably more than I have. I hardly ever watch it myself now. My inspiration comes mainly from just going out, taking walks around the local scenery, down on the beach a lot. I think it's the shapes of the stones and the cliffs, the water. It just inspires me with different ideas. Obviously, some of the stuff I do is inspired by other woodworkers. You can see on some of the things I do is Krenov inspired, and I think I said Alan Peters as well. So some things, obviously, I take from other woodworkers, but I like to think a lot of what I do is straight out of my mind.
Well, I think you're right, because I think I can see a little bit of the Krenov, as far as the skill set in construction, but I think that the designs are not pure Krenov. They're obviously things that you've come up with. I think your bench is really brilliant, and the attachments, and I can see like your top piece with the wedge. I have actually the old Stanley iron one of those on my bench, and so I think your interpretations of these things are individual and are commendable. So I don't really have any more questions. I'm impressed and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much.
Brilliant. Jim, over to you.
Hey Mitch, you all right?
Hi Jim, how you doing?
I can't see you. Where you gone? He hasn't stuck you up on the screen. Where am I
He's
going?
disappeared me again.
He's disappeared. Here you is. Here you is. Quick question. It was the YouTube. Oh, by the way, brilliant, superb stuff. You know that I don't make, as you know, because I try and avoid that. Otherwise, I'll end up doing a kitchen. But the YouTube stuff. You posted up some monetization of that, and I noticed some of the graphs on that. The where you've made money, obviously, there's a huge differential between some of them and others, which is obviously the amount of people that watch them and share them. Did you notice also that obviously they've changed their entire monetization protocol now, and that it's virtually went from pretty poor to absolutely despicably poor now? Is that affecting you at all in terms of that money coming in the future?
I don't know about in the future, quite possibly. There was a big change 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was, and I definitely saw a drop off then in how much revenue I was getting for each video. And also more recently, the way they serve up videos when people are searching for it, but also when you've seen a video, they'll serve up what they think you want to see next. And when that came in, yeah, viewer levels just disintegrated really, and certainly subscriptions went down a hell of a lot. I've never lost subscribers, that's always been growing, but the rate of growth disintegrated almost completely.
When we're talking with Phil last week, or was it last week? I don't know. Where's time going when you're locked in? Obviously, the Instagram side of things nowadays. I looked a bit further into that this week, and I think there is a conduit whereby, if you think of Instagram as your kind of shop window, and that you vector from that into your other streams, like if you're going to be predominantly on YouTube, then it's kind of like a calling card. I noticed on some of the, because I'm an avid, actually I watch YouTube as a channel entirely almost now, but I noticed that some of the really high popular, I think that some of the car programs and stuff like that, they've got a presence on Instagram, and that links. They mention it on YouTube and they mention it on Instagram, and the two, it's a kind of like a snapshot of what's up next, and it drags people in. So it's something you might, I'm looking at obviously for KTTV coming up next year, but it's something that I think is quite a good formula. So it's just a tip I picked up this week, that they do tend to link the two together.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I could do an awful lot more to drive my YouTube channel. I do very little on social media. I mean, I've got Facebook and Instagram. I don't post enough if I want to grow the channel quickly. To be honest with you, the joy I get out of YouTube is the connection with people, the sharing the ideas. And yes, it's nice to get some revenue from it, but as long as the revenue from the different streams that I've got is sufficient just to keep me reasonably comfortable, yeah, that makes me happy. I can't get stressed because of my illness, so I do limit myself on some of the things I do. But yes, I could definitely advertise it more.
I think you'll find also that, and I've found this looking at existing YouTubers, is that a lot of the content is actually quite old, and it's been revitalized by the way it's pushed. If somebody picks up a channel, they tend to sort of feed off, and if you've got that many back, you might find that your revenue increases dramatically, and you could just retire to Barbados or something. Anyway, thanks very much, mate. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to talk to you about the media side of things, so take care.
Cheers, Jim. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Andy Tuckwell up next.
Hi, hi, Mitch.
Hi.
Again, I'm afraid it's not much of a question, it's more of a comment. I just really wanted to say thank you for doing so many really useful videos. And I've used some of your back catalogue as a sort of reference library. If I forget how to do a particular joint, I'll go to your channel and find your presentation of how to do it, because I really appreciate how you don't bulk them out. You're not putting a 10-minute plug for merchandise every 30 seconds. You're just showing a lovely clear view of how to actually do it and which bits are important. And you know, it all works. So, you know, thank you from somebody that's enjoyed the work that you've done.
Thanks very much, Andy. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
My videos are very different from a lot of videos on woodworking. Perhaps that's why my revenue isn't great from it. And certainly when I got into this, I was mentioning to Geoffrey before we started that probably, and Derek, probably I'm the most unlikely person that anyone that knows me that would go into doing something like YouTube. And I think that really shows on all my early videos. My presentation skills are dreadful. But hey, I enjoy it.
Yeah, but it's the woodworking skills that matter more. And again, though, in some of the other videos, like the church steps extension, or the series you did with somebody else about restoring sash windows, or that beautiful, inventive, clever bench design, you know, you've got some. You're showing the thinking that goes into a project, not just cut here, glue here, and that is a subject that's interesting in itself. And I think, you know, what you started off saying, it's a regular theme, and I know people who've been let down by the education system in a similar way, where I think as a society, we've got a problem that we just don't value particular sorts of practical intelligence. They're not easy to assess in a multiple choice paper test, so they get left out. But having people understand how their toys went together and came apart again, you know, these are important people. Right, rant over, and Geoffrey's doing his best to train them for the future.
Thank you. I wish my headmistress had taken the same attitude towards it as you suggested there. But actually, I can't say the education system let me down. Yes, I found infant school and junior school boring because I think really my upbringing, I've learnt most of the stuff before I got to school. And so the lessons were just boring. So I had to find something else to do. And unfortunately, that was being naughty.
Right.
Once I got to secondary school, suddenly with so many more subjects open to me, I found some interests and knuckled down. And of course, you think, well, I can't keep being naughty and keep getting into trouble if I want a nice life at the end of the day. I've got to knuckle down. Otherwise, you know, I won't get a job. And all those things changed your attitude, and thankfully they changed my attitude at a young enough level. I got great support through secondary school and through college and polytechnic, as it was that I went to.
Brilliant.
Well, keep up the good work anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Keep watching.
Matthias, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mitch. That was a fascinating talk, and particularly the stuff you've been making is gorgeous. So hat off for that. Same as with Andy, this is perhaps more in the nature of comments rather than questions. What you just said now about being bored at school because in the earlier stages, because basically you already knew what you were supposed to learn. I recognize that very much from my own school days, although my solution was not to be naughty, but to go off to the school library, spend half of the day there instead, which of course got me into less trouble with headmasters and teachers.
I should have done that.
Yeah, but I mean that, and that I think that sort of reflects. I watch very few videos on YouTube or on the net in general on how to do things, because while I usually find them very interesting, and if I sit through them, they can be extremely instructive in a way that a text cannot be, because you actually get to see what's happening. All those years I spent in the school library and subsequent in the public library in town means that I'm about a 600 word a minute reader. So books are so much faster for me than watching someone actually go through the process. So I tend to be a bit discouraged from watching videos. I guess maybe I should give it another go. Enough with the comments and enough about me. What I did want to ask you also was, from what you said, it sounds like there was a bit of a banana peel involved in you getting into this whole YouTube channel thing. But now that you've been doing it for a while, and are you beginning to, as it were, formulate some sort of game plan? Do you have ideas for how you want to take it further, or how you want to continue with it, or develop it in any way?
Gosh, develop it. Yeah, as long as it pays a reasonable amount, covers my costs, because obviously there are costs involved in materials and time that I'm taken away from doing other things. As long as it sort of covers that cost, or starts to cover that cost, then I'd like to carry on, because I get so much more than the revenue. I get as I say, the comments and the conversations I have with viewers is very valuable to me. I know that will continue. Even if I stop doing YouTube today, there'll be plenty of people viewing my videos, and so I'll still have that interaction. But I suppose the motivation to keep doing the videos is to keep that going, and I get a lot of enjoyment from it. And I'm doing things that I wouldn't do normally. A lot of the projects are little ones. A lot of the joint videos will be doing joints that maybe I haven't done myself before. So I'll do one practice joint and then I'll video it. Or in some cases, no practice joints, and make the video. So I'm extending my knowledge at the same time as trying to teach others. So from that point of view, that's the main motivation to keep going, keep making videos. I know what Phil said last week about you don't earn enough from it to make it a profession, or to make it a large part of your income. I totally agree with that, and I am in a lucky situation that I've got a mix of incomes, and I don't want for much. I'm not an extravagant person. You can take your foreign holidays. I'm not interested in that. So I don't need a large income, and YouTube fits in with not giving me enough money to do anything like that. Yeah. You also spoke about libraries as well, and that reminds me. When I was trying to learn more about woodworking, the libraries was certainly in this area were rubbish. They didn't have woodworking books in them, and I trawled through the second-hand stores, and that's where I picked up most of my books.
All right, I can imagine. I mean, many libraries are on a pretty tight acquisition budget anyway, and unfortunately, as we all know, handwork has not been given the recognition and encouragement that it should have. Absolutely. I mean, I went to school in the 70s in Sweden, and we were still being taught handwork as an obvious part of the curriculum, no matter whether you were going to go down an academic path or whatever. It was just something you did. Yeah. But I know that 10, 15 years later, that started to slide, because of course it costs money to maintain that kind of thing, and it was sort of seen as not producing the workforce of tomorrow. But
you mentioned Sweden then, and every time I hear you talk on here, it takes me back to when I was working, because I used to work for Ericsson.
Oh right, yeah. And that would, if you've been doing woodworking for 20 years, that would have been back in their heyday.
Yeah, I was there between, for the introduction of GSM and for the growth of GSM. So yeah, very busy days indeed.
I can imagine.
But spent some nice time in Stockholm, and some not so nice time waiting in Arlanda airport in a snowstorm.
Oh yeah, been there, done that. There were no T-shirts to be bought. Thank you very much, Mitch.
Thank you.
Speech. Thank you.
Brilliant. Over to you again, Chester. And then we've got Strenik, and then that'll be it for the questions. So, Chester.
So, Mitch, you keep touching on things that I think are kind of important in there. One is that what you were just talking about is about them teaching in school certain things. And one of the things that I think that they're missing in school a lot is teaching people logic and thinking and mechanical problem solving, which these are things that some people inherently have, and perhaps you do, and judging from your talk, I would say you do, but many people don't even imagine that that's something that can be learned or practiced. So I think that would be a good subject to bring back into schools, because I think it was there back in the 20s and 30s. And I'm talking about American schools, of course, but I think that's changed. On the monetization aspect of the YouTube channel you were talking about, I have a friend who has a very big YouTube channel, and I've even done some of her videos for her on repairing a cherry bench and introduced to some of her followers woodworking and tools, because she does mostly sewing and design and cake baking and more of a Martha Stewart sort of style thing. So we've crossed over that way. But she's developed, and she goes to big conventions and she pushes her channel. And obviously, when you look at her numbers, they're vast compared to mine. The reason I started doing the YouTube channels was, I think, partially because I work in my shop alone. I don't have a studio where people walk by, so there's no human contact. And working in the film business for so many years, it was always dealing with designers or directors or something. So you were always sharing the creative process. But in my shop, that it's only shared with the person that I'm making something for, and the satisfaction you get from that. So the YouTube aspect sort of became a method of communicating to the outside world what I was doing. And it wasn't exclusively to teach, but also you said that there's more than money that you get out of it. And I wouldn't be here on this show at all, perhaps, if I didn't do YouTube or Facebook, I guess. I don't really remember how I got on this, but those are the payoffs. And so she's said to me many times, and my sister, who's a big business person, has said, you need to figure out a way to monetize it. And I'm pretty independently wealthy, comparatively. I'm not a millionaire or anything, but just like you, I don't spend a lot of money. I own more than I need to. I have a roof over my head, and that, to me, in this world to this day, is extremely wealthy. There are many people that don't have those advantages. So I wanted to say that I think that your approach is good, and that it's not all about the money. And like I said, God forbid, well, YouTube's changing, because I used to watch different people's videos. I've stopped watching them because they're either too polished, and the chisels disappear. They point at things, and they use these sort of gimmicky things to try to keep you there. And I much prefer somebody just talking about what they're doing and learning from that, rather than having all of the extraneous stuff. So I try to keep mine simple, and all I do is basically talk about what it is that I'm doing. And sometimes I mess up and I say the wrong things, and I go, oh, I need to redo that whole thing. I called the tote the handle, and people are going to go, well, you're an idiot. And I'm like, well, you know what? You make mistakes. And so I leave them in there. But anyway, I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I totally recognize the mistakes things. And in the early days, I'd make mistakes and I would edit them out. But I just leave everything in now. And why not? Because people will learn from my mistakes. So I think that's good. And definitely on the financial side, it is the least important thing in my YouTube work. It is the finance of it. It honestly is. It's getting to communicate with people like yourselves. And again, from a workshop when you're totally on your own. My workshops in my home, I don't see passers-by at all. I'm just by myself. Obviously, it's nice to have the financial income from it, to put something aside to do things for the family. But the best for me is for the families to stay healthy. And if that means that I don't do lots of promotional stuff, so be it.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think you're coming at it from a nice place, and I think that's why you have so many followers, is people are comfortable with you being real. And so keep it up, and I hope someday maybe I'll have even more. But it's very slow growing, and I'm all right with that. I just went over 1,000. I mean, subscribers, and as far as any kind of money coming in, I don't even have a farthing coming in, so it's not an issue.
Until this evening, Chester, I didn't know you had a channel. So why don't you put your link in the chat and I'll have a look at it.
Okay, I think it's just my name, Chester Spear. I don't.
Okay. I'll have a
Yeah,
look.
as a matter of fact, there was some channel that wanted me to give a link, and I'm so poor with this whole computer stuff that I don't even know what it's called, computer stuff, that I couldn't figure out what they meant by a link. So I didn't do it. So I just shut it off. So, but I think if you just Google my name, Chester Spear, S-P-I-E-R, it comes up with that channel. So
you haven't said what you do on that channel, but I'm thinking that it's woodwork. So there's definitely a synergy. So, you know, let's do a collaboration, see if we can get your numbers up.
Okay, I'd love it.
There you go. Shrenik, over to you.
Good evening, Mitch. How are you?
Hello.
Sorry, I missed the front end of the talk.
That's appalling. You don't get to ask a question if you don't watch it.
He's going to ask you, what did you speak about?
So actually, Chester sort of touched upon the similar area as I was going to speak to in his first point. And it's really a shame that in England, you don't really learn woodworking in school much anymore. Most schools, colleges won't teach it as a subject. And the one thing that woodworking taught me was patience. I used to speak at twice the speed I'm speaking now, and some people still think I speak quite fast. So I really had to learn to slow things down, to get things right, be a bit more patient and work. And it's a skill that it taught me, and there was no other way I could learn it. And it's just something that's really helped me as a person, especially as a youth growing up. It really slowed me down quite a lot. It's just a shame, and that's what I really wanted to say. And my question is, well, I've got a piece of ash here. Now, would you rather work with ash or purple heart? It had to be done.
Good piece of ash is hard to find.
Ash is very difficult to, well, ash is very easy to find just a few 100 meters from my house. But it's all got ash dieback, and within the next year, it will all be felled and taken away. And there's a restriction for taking any ash from those woods at the moment. So all of it is going to be burnt, which is a great shame, because the actual thing that causes ash dieback overwinters on the fallen leaves. And so you could fell the wood and you could use it and it'd be perfectly safe. And it's a complete waste. It's a travesty.
Oh dear.
It's a shame.
Well, a bit of a rant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, on that end of a rant, I think we'll need to say thank you very much, Mitch. I mean, that was really interesting, and I think you know, we've all learnt not to have our high aspirations of becoming a YouTuber to make money, but to become a YouTuber to enjoy and share our passions. And you certainly have done that tonight. So I'd like everybody to sort of unmute themselves and to raise their bench beverage and to toast Mitch and the bench. Mitch.
Cheers, Mitch.
Cheers, Mitch.
Thank you so much. Mitch. It's been an absolute pleasure. See you all next week.
Great work, Mitch.
Brilliant. Well,
It's a high-tech conversation.
And a low-tech topic.
Live on the World Wide Web via Zoom. Bench Talk 101.